All right, good to see everybody. Welcome back to Walks on Wall Street. We are in a little bit of a different location tonight. We are in Dumbo, Brooklyn, overlooking the gorgeous Lower Manhattan skyline. You can see the One World Trade Center in the distance and pretty much all of Lower Manhattan. Now, if you notice, it kind of looks like, I don't know, I was explaining this to my friend earlier today before I started streaming. You know, it's almost like you're in an old movie, right? Almost like a filter, I guess, if you will. Now, the air quality, if you remember, I think 3 weeks ago now, when we were doing the live stream from this exact location, about 3 weeks to the day, the air quality was even worse. And it was due to the wildfires in Canada. Very, very horrible situation going on there. Now, I'm not sure if the poor air quality is from that, but I was reading an article briefly that over the next coming week in New York, we could see worse than normal air quality due to the wildfires in Canada. So not good. That guy was huge, man. Look at him, there he is. Cool. Well, I forget what I was saying, but I guess it doesn't matter. So tonight is going to be a shorter than normal live stream. As you can see right here in front of us is the Brooklyn Bridge. We are actually going to be walking across the Brooklyn Bridge tonight. It's a gorgeous night in Dumbo. I mean, my God, picture perfect night. We'll be checking out some of the views of Lower Manhattan. It is pretty clear, even though the air quality is horrible. It kind of makes the view look a little bit better. But we're going to be talking about a few things on tonight's live stream. And we actually got a lot of positive economic news. And I tweeted about this on my Twitter today. If you follow @WalksWallStreet. You know, we got the Q1 GDP numbers out. And they came in at 2%. And that is well above the 1.3% estimate. So this is good news. And this comes in the face of pretty much every single economist, right, on Wall Street. I'm being a little bit facetious there, but many people are calling for a recession. Many people are pounding the table about this economic, or I should say potential economic slowdown in the United States specifically, but we haven't really seen that at all, right? So GDP numbers came out way better than expected. Obviously, this is an annualized rate, but 2% was very, very good data coming out today. So we'll talk about US GDP. We also got some consumer spending data out. Now, there was a couple things that I sort of want to maybe ask the chat about, specifically as it relates to consumer spending. Because if you drill down in this GDP report, one of the things that really bolstered this high reading is consumer spending, right? So we've talked about the manufacturing sector in the US economy, and we've talked about the service sector. And the service sector has really been carrying a lot of the weight, driving this economy higher. Now, remember, I believe at the start of this year, there was about an 8.7% boost in Social Security payments. Now, this was due to the cost of living adjustment, right? Since, you know, we all know what happened during the coronavirus. Unfortunately, inflation went wild in the United States, prompting the government to pass this bill that increases the amount of Social Security payments, I believe, by almost 9%, about 8.7%. So more people have money in their pockets, particularly the seniors. So could this have been one of the data points, or I would say one of the catalysts that have driven that consumer spending? And maybe if there's anybody in the chat who receives Social Security, maybe you can give a little bit of an insight on if you've gotten a little bit of a bump in your payment. Now, another thing that I think we need to talk about tonight is inflation. Now, why are we going to do that? Well, tomorrow at 8:30, you know, mark your calendars, wake up early, do whatever you got to do, because tomorrow at 8:30, right as the bell rings, I would say an hour before the bell rings on Wall Street, we are going to be getting the Federal Reserve's preferred inflation gauge. Yes, that is right. Many people think it's the CPI number, but that's actually not true. The Federal Reserve, more particularly Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, they look at the Core Personal Consumption Expenditures Index, or the PCE, and that is expected to rise about 0.4% month over month in May. That is up from about 0.38% in April. If we take a look at the year-over-year estimates, the vast majority of economists on Wall Street are estimating about a 4.7% year-over-year increase from May of 2022 to May of 2023. So it's going to be very important, and I think we'll probably be spending the vast majority of our time on tomorrow night's stream talking about that inflation reading, because we're almost in July. Can you guys believe that? Crazy. So June is pretty much in the rear view mirror at this point, right? Only a couple days left. And that means we are ever approaching the next FOMC meeting. So as we know, in June, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell and all of the voting members of the Federal Reserve decided to take a pause as it relates in the hiking cycle. So there was about 10 consecutive interest rate hikes. But in June, the Federal Reserve said, all right, we're not going to raise rates. We're going to hold rates steady. We're going to see how the economic data and the economic environment unravels. And then we're going to make a more data-driven decision as to, are we going to raise rates in July? So that's about it. All right, let me say hello to everybody in the chat and we will get the stream started. Hopefully you all had a very good Thursday. I see Jafet Perez. I see Brian is here by the book. Sammy Wu, what's up? Jay is here. Stephen Bate, Cloud Numbers. I see British Gray from Tampa, Florida. Richard Vogel, British Gray. Austin City Limits, the one and only Vinny Castellano from Staten Island. Let me go ahead and put my backpack on. Not a backpack, but briefcase. Look at these views tonight. Absolutely gorgeous. Now, I found myself in downtown Brooklyn for the majority of the day today, working on a couple interesting projects down there. Hopefully I can bring you guys in on that soon, but man, the views are gorgeous. So once again, dead ahead, you can see the World Trade Center, and then we have the Brooklyn Bridge, which we're actually going to be walking over. Should be nice. This is Dumbo, Brooklyn. Yeah, Bonzo Law says Dumbo is so aesthetic. It's really nice. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous neighborhood. Now check this out. As we move the camera over to the left, not only can you see the Brooklyn Bridge, which is right here, you can see the Manhattan Bridge in the distance because you see the subway going over, but you can see all of Midtown Manhattan. So if you look at this building with the gold spire right here, that's actually the Empire State Building. And if you look all the way to the right, the building with the blue spire, that is the brand new One Vanderbilt. So even though we have a little bit of air quality issues in New York, I think we're still going to get pretty exceptional views as we make our way over the Brooklyn Bridge, which should be nice. Hey, Thomas Ellis here says, what are your thoughts about the oil prices right now? Well, I mean, it's a good question, right? And this reminds me of Tuesday's live stream. If it wasn't Tuesdays, it was Mondays. We were talking about crude oil specifically. Now, if you look at the crude oil futures contract, ticker symbol CL, I believe we're still trading below $70 a barrel. I don't think I had a chance to look at it today. I was pretty caught up. But, you know, we were talking about if we go all the way back to March of 2022, look at how fast these water taxis go. I had no idea they go that fast. Look at that thing. That thing's going as fast as the raccoon we saw like 5 minutes ago. How wild was that raccoon? Like running right through the shot. That was so sick. But anyway, if you look at where crude oil topped out, I think the exact date was March 14th of 2022. We were trading at $130 a barrel. And every time you turned on any of the mainstream financial channels, Bloomberg, CNBC, if you read a Reuters article, you know, Yahoo Finance article, you know, we were getting inundated and hammered with article after, you know, financial pundit coming on the TV predicting $250 a barrel crude oil, right? And we sort of came to the consensus on the live stream that that was probably the top in the commodity cycle as it relates to crude. And ever since, you know, crude has been cut in half, right? We're trading at $70 a barrel. And I think it's going to stay that way. Now, it's funny because we talked about the PMI numbers in China. So as it relates to the manufacturing sector in China. And I think crude oil sort of acted as a leading economic indicator to tell us in the market that the opening from the zero COVID policy wasn't going to be as robust as many had expected. But I don't know, I think we're gonna see depressed prices in crude oil for a while. Before we move on, I wanna zoom in on the Statue of Liberty. That's one of the things that's so cool about Dumbo, Brooklyn. You pretty much have unobstructed views everywhere. So the little green dot on your screen is the Statue of Liberty. So if you guys are visiting New York as a tourist or you're looking to move to Brooklyn, this is the spot to get amazing unobstructed views of Lower Manhattan. If you remember last night's live stream, we were actually right across the water right here. This is the South Street Seaport area, or I should say neighborhood in New York. Very beautiful. I see Richard Vogel is here. What's up? Welcome, welcome. J49 says every summer when you're ready to travel, the refiner shut down. All right, let me catch. Hey, Bree Grams is here. What's up? Good to see you. Lady Sarita, welcome. Thomas Conroy says, Tom, has anybody ever said you sound like Patrick Bateman? I don't think so. I don't think anybody said that. I'm not too sure who that is. I'm sure he's a nice guy. All right, let's, Western Mass Dave, I see you. Good to see you. All right, let's head out. Let's head out, guys. I see Hawaii. One more shot of the Brooklyn Bridge here. Daniel says, Tom, what do you think of buying Bud Light stock? Are you referring to Anheuser-Busch? So Bud Light is a subsidiary brand, I believe, of Anheuser-Busch. I don't have any exposure to those like alcohol companies. Me personally, I have a rule of thumb for me, and that's anything in relation to cigarettes or alcohol, right? So like Marlboro, I don't own, I don't own, and I'll never have exposure to that directly. Maybe indirectly through an index, but just as I don't think those type of companies, they don't need my money, right? I guess I think they do more harm than good, in my personal opinion. You know, just my personal opinion. I am not a big fan. Right behind the Brooklyn Bridge. Now imagine, I forget the exact name of this new development. I think Dan Zhang explained this particular one to us. But I believe each individual floor is its own unique unit. So imagine the views you have there, overlooking the Brooklyn Bridge and all Lower Manhattan. Really, really nice. Hey Keith, says Tom, any updates on the fire at Tiffany's? You know what, Keith? That's another crazy thing that happened today. So, you know, speaking of LVMH, right, Moet Hennessy, arguably, well, not arguably, one of the most successful brands in the world, one of the most, I should say, valuable companies in the world. They just finished their renovations at the 5th Avenue flagship store. Now the problem is there was a big electrical fire that broke out in the basement this morning. I heard about it and I actually smelled it on my way to work. I don't think anybody was injured. I actually think 2 people were injured. I take that back. But it seems a little weird, right? It seems a little fishy that there would be, you know, an electrical fire breaking out after they just did about $500 million in renovations. I mean, think about that. LVMH, I think it was about a 1.5-year renovation process of Tiffany, the big flagship store at 5th Avenue. And then after all of that work, you have a electrical fire? I don't know, it seems like maybe there was some shoddy work going on there. I'm sure you guys saw that on the news too. Now we're coming up on the corner of Water Street. So we're gonna literally walk all the way up this street until we get on the on-ramp. Essentially the walking on-ramp of the bridge. You know, even though it's 9 o'clock out on a Thursday, there's a lot of people outside hanging out, having a good time in Dumbo. You have the Shake Shack across the street. Hey, flat smacks, everybody's buying Bitcoin for the 4th to celebrate financial freedom from our fiat masters. Hilarious. You know, funny enough, Bitcoin has actually been getting a pretty decent bid, especially after all that craziness that has been going on with the SEC, if you will. But I think the biggest story for today, which was very encouraging as an American, is GDP numbers came in much better than expected. And that's in the face of almost every single economist on the street calling for a recession, right? So the technical definition of a recession is 2 consecutive negative quarters of GDP. But GDP actually came in at 2%, well above the estimate of 1.3%. Now, the vast majority of that beat, I should say, was driven by consumer spending. And I think there's a little bit of impromptu market research here tonight. It's a Thursday night, it's almost 9:30 at night. And it seems like there's still a lot of people out, you know, dining, spending, doing a lot of interesting stuff. So that's good. Hey, Dan Zhang, what's up? This is Tom. Dan Zhang says, Tom, have you ever seen that Michael Saylor backed out of the crypto debate with Peter Schiff in Germany? I didn't see that, but you know what? I feel like there's just been so many debates between Peter Schiff specifically as it relates to Bitcoin that it's sort of like just a dead argument, right? I mean, if you just, you know, go on YouTube and go on YouTube and search Peter Schiff Bitcoin debate, there's thousands, literally, with Max Kaiser, with all these other pundits. And it's sort of getting a little bit redundant. Would you guys agree? Like, at this point, it's like, look, it's either you don't like Bitcoin and you're not gonna own it, or you do like it and you're gonna have exposure. Like, I mean, I don't know what else there is to argue about. So I think more, in my view, I think a lot of those things are more to just drive viewership, and, you know, people like to see, you know, fights, if you will. This is Grimaldi's very famous coal brick oven pizzeria here in Dumbo, right in the corner of Front Street. But isn't New York City supposedly or allegedly, I don't think they passed this, but they want to ban coal fire pizza or something like that. I think there was some guy that actually went to City Hall and was protesting by flinging pizza over the gates, which was kind of hilarious. Now, I don't know if that's going to actually have any staying power. I know all the new developments that are going up in New York, they're not allowed to have gas stoves. So all the new developments that are going up now will all have electric. NYC says yes, coal and brick ovens. That just seems a little bit, I don't know, it seems a little bit silly to me. Hey, Ibrahim Azam, good to see you. Welcome. We are in Dumbo. We're going to be walking across the Brooklyn Bridge tonight. You know, so that's a good question. Somebody asked, what is your thoughts on the Apple Vision Pro and its impact to the stock price potentially? Well, here's what I think, and I'm interested in what you guys think as well. I believe Tim Cook actually dropped his projections as it relates to how many units they're going to sell. Wasn't the original amount 250,000 units? I think Tim Cook has since then dropped that particular amount. Now, here's what I think. The price point is very, very steep for the average consumer. So I don't think you're going to see a big amount of adoption or huge adoption in the first generation product. What I think you're going to see, wow, tons of traffic getting onto the Brooklyn Bridge. What I think you're going to see at first is the die-hard Apple fans trying out the product, doing reviews, giving feedback. And then over time, maybe during the second generation, depending on demand or feedback from, the real hardcore Apple fanboys and girls, then I think you'll start to see the prices come down substantially. But there needs to be like real world applications for this Vision Pro. I don't see people buying this thing and just walking around the city with it, for example, right? I couldn't envision a world where you're walking the streets of Brooklyn, New York, or you're walking the streets of Manhattan, and you see everybody with the Vision Pro on. I don't think you're gonna have that. I think it'll be a supplement to maybe like an in-home experience, an in-home entertainment experience, things like that. I don't know, any thoughts there? Or is anybody, let's just say this, is anybody here in the chat planning on buying the Vision Pro when it comes out? I'm not. The last thing I'll say is Apple, by far, and I don't think anybody could debate this, has the best marketing team on the planet. If you go to Apple's website and you look at the Vision Pro commercial, if you will, that sort of explains what it does, that really sells the hell out of it, does it not? I mean, it is a really, well put together commercial that details and outlines every single thing that it does. You can't say the same thing about the Oculus or whatever Mark Zuckerberg has going on. It's almost like you don't even know what's going on there because the marketing is non-existent. Keith's is much more potential than a fancy gaming ad. I think in time, for sure. But I think just this price point is too steep for people, at least at first. Let's get onto the bridge and then I'll catch up on some of the comments. We are now walking on top of the Brooklyn Bridge. It's the little stairway here. Whew, man, I'm tired tonight. But look at this. This is a nice view that'll wake you up. So we are now on top of the Brooklyn Bridge. And look at those views. Beautiful view of One World Trade Center. And Dan saying, here's that brand new development you were talking about last time. Could you imagine having an apartment unit in this particular building and you have totally unobstructed views of the Brooklyn Bridge and all lower Manhattan? That is unreal. Yeah, Battery Graham says the smoke is gonna make you tired. I think so. I mean, all day today, the air quality was very, very poor in Manhattan. You're right. Hey, Luke1234. Good to see ya. Bottomless Coffee, what's up? What's up, Tom? I was just here the other day. It's one of my favorite places in the city. So the pedestrian path, you come right up. You can see a little bit of the Manhattan Bridge. Continue to walk over. Ibrahim Azam says, I feel like New York's infrastructure is improving. It is improving. And, we were talking about this yesterday. I think it may have been Daniel O'Brien who sort of asked this question. They're like, you know, why are US assets performing better than expected as it relates to US equities and as it relates to real estate when the Federal Reserve is in the midst of a quantitative tightening cycle, a very aggressive one? You know, where is all this extra liquidity coming from? And so to Ibrahim Azam's point about the infrastructure, there's two parts to the story, right? There's monetary policy, in which the Federal Reserve sets that monetary policy, and then there's fiscal policy, and that's government spending. And the Biden administration passed so many particular bills that are going to juice government spending and give subsidy to the manufacturing sector in the United States through the infrastructure bill, through the CHIPS Act. And I think that's one of the reasons why you're still seeing, you know, such robust GDP growth in the United States, right? Infrastructure bill means more spending on roads, bridges, and tunnels, whether you agree with it or not, right? I'm sort of being apolitical here, but we're just sort of exploring the reasons as to why the market could be performing better than most had expected. And in addition to that, look at all this traffic. GDP growth coming in better than most expected. Hey, somebody's here, says Tom watching the live stream from India. What's up? Mike, New York is here. What's up, Mike? The Wizard says, I'd love an apartment in that building. So would I. Dan Zhang says, Tom, have you noticed that in the past few years, lots of the top Manhattan realtors are expanding into Brooklyn? People like Sirhan and Frederick, yeah. You know, because Brooklyn is very fashionable now, and a lot of developers. So the thing is, you know, when you think about Billionaires Row in New York City, a lot of people think, oh, the developers just buy the plot of land and then they build it and then they make a ton of money. Not so fast. It is a very, very difficult process that takes literally decades, right? 157, just the process of the land assemblage alone took over 5 years, right? Then you have to battle other neighboring buildings to purchase their air rights, right? It's called land assemblage. It's literally like you're playing Monopoly in real life. So as Brooklyn started to become gentrified, as our New Yorkers know, particularly neighborhoods like Dumbo, in which we were walking through today, it's a little bit easier to buy up these old buildings, complete that assemblage for air rights, and build a lot of these ultra luxury, high-end condominiums. And there's a lot of demand, not only from international buyers, but from domestic buyers right here in New York. You know, Dan, speaking of another crazy new development, you can kind of see it through all the smoke, but that's the old Dime Savings Bank. That is a super tall, luxurious condominium that's literally adjacent to the Barclays Center, right? Atlantic Terminal, Brooklyn. Hey, Jerry's, Tom, can you tell me what gimbal you're using? I don't know exactly, but I'll tell you how to get it. I just went on Amazon and I typed in gimbal and I literally bought the first one that came up. Beautiful view of the Empire State Building in the distance. Hey, Brian Forrest, what's up? John says more room for crews and equipment too. It's a good point. And it's also like Manhattan is such a finite amount of space, right? So as Manhattan comes filled up, where's the next fashionable borough, right? And it just so happens to be Brooklyn. However, you know, Long Island City, Queens, I mean, the rent's there. I mean, Dan could tell you. Dan Sang used to live in a nice place, really nice place, Long Island City. I mean, the rents there are crazy. Now, the problem is a lot of these developers are choosing to build mostly luxurious, very, very high-end buildings, right? Because that's really the only way you're going to make any money. Due to the high cost of living, the taxes. These apartments are so unique. You have these floor-to-ceiling glass windows. You can almost literally see into the people's apartments, but imagine seeing that every night as your view. You could see all the way to Midtown Manhattan and all Lower Manhattan too. Hey, SME Media is here. What's up? What's up, SME Media? Chris from Florida. Good to see you, Chris. Hey, Brendan O'Driscoll is here. Says, hey, Tom. Good to see you. Good to see you. Western Mass Dave. Now, for the people who are just joining, we are walking across the Brooklyn Bridge. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter than normal live stream. But tomorrow is probably the most important day of the week as it relates to economic data and economic activity. So tomorrow we are going to get the Federal Reserve's preferred inflation gauge, and that's going to drop at 8:30. So you have about an hour before the bell rings. So you'll probably see some volatility in futures before the open on that reading. And that is the Core Personal Consumption Expenditures Index, or the PCE. So if that reading comes in hotter than expected, there's a high probability that we will get that rate hike in July. Now, before we started live streaming, you know what? You're right. There is a lot of emergency vehicles heading towards Brooklyn. I don't know why. Look at all the NYPD cars. Here's another one. Maybe there's a concert going on or something like that in at the Barclays Center. Yeah, you're right. I just noticed that. Tons of police officers headed towards downtown Brooklyn. Huh. But anyway, so guys, before I started streaming, I took a quick look at the futures markets. And we had a pretty big jump as it relates to, I should say, the pricing in of another interest rate hike. You can actually kind of see into these apartments. These are really nice. So before the GDP number that we got out today, which was way better than expected, the economy's pretty much firing on all cylinders according to that report, the odds of a 25 basis point rate hike in July, which is literally next week, right at the next FOMC meeting, is about 75%. So before the GDP numbers, which came out and freaking blew the face off, ripped the face off of the market, there was about a 75% probability or likelihood that the Federal Reserve would raise rates by 25 basis points at the next meeting. Now, after the GDP results, that number shot up to 85%, which would make sense, right? Because the Federal Reserve uses its tools, if you will, raising interest rates, letting assets run off the balance sheet, shrinking the size of its balance sheet, to sort of put the brakes on the economy. And if the economy is running really hot, right, better than expected GDP number, well, that probably means the Fed's going to be looking at that data just like me and you, and they're going to be saying, hey, 2% GDP growth in the United States when the vast majority of economists were expecting literally 1.3%. Okay, we got to pump the brakes here a little bit more. We got to raise rates again and get back on track in hopes to bring that inflation rate down to that 2% target. So I have a question for all my friends in the chat. Do you guys think we're going to get a 25 basis point rate hike in July at the next meeting, or do you think the Fed's going to pause again? Look at this. This caught my eye. I think this guy still has his Christmas tree up. Look at that. This guy still has his Christmas tree in his house. I love that. Christmas in July. Chinook wins. Says, you think you're going to get another 25? The Wizard says pause. DM says pause. Steve V says no. Joe Hernandez says rates are definitely going to go up again. We'll see. I think we're going to get one more 25 basis point rate hike, and then I think they're going to keep the Fed funds rate at 5.5. We'll see. Victor says the Fed will pause again. TK Porsche says ask that after tomorrow's data, but most likely 25 basis points in July. Yeah, that's true. I mean, the PCE is coming out tomorrow, so if that comes in hot, you know, tomorrow, if the PCE comes in like screaming, like scorcher, blow your face back hot, we'll probably get a 50 basis point rate hike. Who knows? So this building is actually the brand new Extel development. So when you think of Extel, you could think of Gary Burnett, who pioneered Billionaires Row right at Central Park South, 57th Street. The first building on Billionaires Row to go up was actually 157, and that included the luxurious Park Hyatt Hotel. And then after that, he actually assembled another building, one-upped himself on Billionaires Row, called Central Park Tower, which is even more luxurious, more expensive, and even taller than 157. Now, speaking of real estate, Dan Zhang was talking about Serhant of the brokerage, well, Ryan Serhant of the brokerage Serhant. He actually has the listing of the top triplex atop the Central Park Tower. It's on the market for $250 million. $250 million. That triplex penthouse can be yours for a cool $250 million. Type usernames. His rates have risen slightly. For the most part today, I don't think he will do 50 basis points due to an administration they were wrong to delay, or due to an admission they were wrong to delay. Interesting point. Also, you are 100% correct. I was looking at the yield curve today. I actually tweeted this out. The 1-year US Treasury yield right now is 5.35%, I think. No, 5.4% for a 1-year US Treasury. So think about that. You know, anybody who doesn't want to speculate and, you know, some would say gamble, right, their money in the stock market, you could just go on to Treasury Direct and buy a 1-year US Treasury and get almost 5.5% risk-free rate of return on your money. That is impressive. I actually started to text some of my friends and some of my family about that today, because that's almost like too good to pass up in a way. I mean, think about that. I mean, if you have $1 million, you know, that's $55,000 a year in income, risk-free. So if you don't think that this is going to exacerbate the flow or the fund flows of money going into fixed income products, I think you need to rethink that, because it definitely will. Anybody here thinking about shifting some of their funds to fixed income? Or anybody here own US Treasuries? Right? I mean, 5.5%, it's kind of irresistible. This is a unique view here, overlooking the, I should say, the ramp that goes to the Brooklyn side of the bridge. Michael Joseph says, you know, I've been laddering since late 2022. Lady Sarita says, yep, I saw a 6-month for 5%. Hudat Dave says, I opened a Treasury Direct account, but I have not put money in it yet. Thinking about it. You know, I believe you could also buy Treasuries directly in your broker dealer, right? Like Schwab, Interactive Brokers. Now, again, I just want to clarify, I'm not suggesting you do this. We're just having a conversation about it, because rates are actually attractive now, which is good. Hey, Michelle K is here. It's such a pretty view. Thank you, Michelle. And you can see the Statue of Liberty all the way in the distance. It's that little green dot. Joel PM says, I have I bonds and 6-month T-bills. Love that. Manage that liquidity. August ICE is here. Welcome. TCs is also state and local tax free. That's another really good selling point too. Now, I was sort of going back and forth on Twitter with a few people, and I said, you know, if you look at fund flows specifically, and if you look at the retail investor, retail has actually increased their exposure materially, like in a really, really big way, towards fixed income. And I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do. I mean, we're finally rewarding savers in America for the first time in quite some time. But I think that's what's also fueling this equity rally, right? You can think about it as a contrarian trade. If you look at the data, you know, retail and institutional money are underexposed US equities, and they're trying to play catch up. And I think that's why you're seeing this market sort of run away and almost creating a lockout rally. That, coupled with what we were talking about yesterday as it relates to global fund flows, right? You think about inflation, which we're going to get the PCE out tomorrow in the United States. Inflation's almost 5% in the US, but in other parts of the world, inflation's at 114%, such as Argentina and the like. All right, let's zoom in on Midtown Manhattan. Look at that. That is an awesome view. You could see just the spire of the Chrysler building. If you look all the way to the right of your screen, that sort of gold cone looking thing, that's the Chrysler building. And directly to the left, that's 432 Park Avenue. Not bad. Hey, the final call is joining us. Good to see you. Michael Joseph, 10K per year in I bonds is good. You get a 6% return. Fixed image understands fixed income people want to stretch the dollar in a time when everything is so expensive. Patricia Ivory, welcome. All right, so Dan Zhang, you're saying, what are some of the risks? Well, let me adjust the camera. All right, there we go. Well, here's what I would say. When you think about the bond market, it's two sections, right? You have sovereign bonds, and then you have corporate debt, right? Corporate bonds. And corporate bonds trade via spreads over the benchmark in the United States, which is usually the 10-year US Treasury yield. So as it relates to corporate debt or corporates, hold on, I just want to make sure I'm streaming in 1080p. I think we are. Maybe it's just the brightness, or maybe it's just hazy due to the wildfire smoke. Do you guys notice that on the live stream tonight? Do you notice that we could almost like barely see the tops of the buildings? Because it's very hazy and smoky. Anyway, so depending on the credit quality of a company, right? So Apple, their corporate debt or their bonds are going to trade at a very thin spread over the 10-year, right? Because Apple could borrow money very cheaply in relation to a company that may, have an extremely low credit rating from the credit ratings agencies, right? Like Moody's and the like. So depending upon the risk of a company as it relates to, what is the probability or what is the likelihood that this company is actually going to make good on its debt obligations? Apple, it's pretty much a lock, right? It would be very, very surprising if Apple defaulted on its bonds. Like I would be so shocked. Relates, right? Well, I guess at times Wall Street traders will look at those corporate bonds or the junk bonds or high yield. And that's big risk for big reward, right? Some of this stuff could be, almost 20%, which is a great return if you're an investor. But then again, if a corporate bond is yielding, 15 to 20%, the company's probably going to go out of business or go bankrupt, there's a high probability of default. So as you think about sovereign bonds or sovereign debt, it's sort of the same thing, right? The US government or the Treasury will issue debt through the Treasury to raise money to fund government spending. And everybody thinks about the United States as risk-free because we've never defaulted on our debt obligations. So it's actually a little bit inaccurate when I say, a 1-year US Treasury is yielding 5.5%. That's risk-free rate of return. It's technically inaccurate. There's always risk there, obviously, but it's like such a low probability that the US is not going to pay its bills, right? And this is sort of the debacle we just went through with the whole debt ceiling thing, right? Remember President Joe Biden came out and said, it is absolutely unacceptable to even put out the impression into the world that the US could potentially default on its debt, right? We always pay our bills in America. So that's why our sovereign debt is so attractive. Now, if you look at sovereign bonds in other parts of the world, that is very high yielding because, just for obvious reasons, right? So when you think about muni bonds or municipal bonds, it's sort of the same thing. You have to look at the financial integrity of the place where you're purchasing those bonds from. There's different default risks depend on how well those different municipalities are run. Hey, Teresa Diaz is here. What's up? Good to see you, Teresa. Welcome. Blue Skies says banks had a successful stress test. They did. So yesterday, the Federal Reserve put out their Fed stress test, you're right, and all 22 participating members passed, which is good news, right? Especially after the horrible crisis that we went through in the United States. More specifically, and I would say more related towards regional banks, right? But a disaster nonetheless. Everybody remembers Silicon Valley Bank. I'm sure that's still fresh in our minds, unfortunately.
Like, think about it. When you have the best moments of your life, are you going back to
Hey, Victor Alfonso is here. What's up? Good to see you. AFG says, yep. When the smoke got real bad in Pennsylvania, I had a P100 filters on when I went outside. It's not so horrible where I think you need a mask tonight, but it's getting there for sure. About 3 weeks ago, when we were walking over the Brooklyn Bridge doing this live stream, I probably should have been wearing a mask, in all honesty. This is very dangerous. Never do that, by the way. But today, it's not so horrible, but I could definitely feel it in my lungs a little bit. I'll just say that. I think there may be a guided tour here. I'll stop to give you guys one more view of Midtown Manhattan. But if you guys are enjoying the live stream so far tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. We usually do these live streams starting at 8:30. So right here, you could actually see the entire Hudson Yards development. Yeah, somebody says it's breathable. It definitely is. See if we can make a move around these people. It's good to see a lot of tourists coming back though to the city. This is the South Street Seaport where we were yesterday. geez, Bree Grams. It's gonna be 115 degrees in Arizona. That's horrible. I don't know if I could do that. And that's dry heat too, which I'm not a fan of. Sort of reminds me when I was in Vegas. This is a really good shot of the One World Trade Center in between the arches of the bridge. You could actually see the 1875 inscribed into the Brooklyn Bridge. I believe the Brooklyn Bridge birthday is May 26th. I'll show you the Brooklyn side one more time. Go this way. Hey, Vivian Francesca, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us, top of the Brooklyn Bridge. We are now officially halfway over. Now this building you can see here to the left, that's my favorite new development in the city. And I'm actually going to be here tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. We are getting a guided tour of a brand new listing that just came on the market at 130 William Street. Super excited about it. I think this is by far the best new development in the city. We may just have enough time to check it out tonight. Beautiful views of Lower Manhattan, but also of the three main bridges, which is the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan Bridge, and the Williamsburg Bridge, depending on if you have an apartment on a high floor. Tons of lights on too at 130 William. This building sold out pretty quick. There's a couple resales on the market though. And I think this is my favorite shot from the Brooklyn Bridge right here. Look at that. You could see the Empire State Building, and then to the left, you see the Bank of America Tower. Hey, TK Porsche, is that a broker preview of the new listing? It is. So it is a broker preview with the Kirsten Jordan team. You may be familiar with Kirsten Jordan. She was the first female cast member on the $1 Million Listing TV show. And I think in May, they solidified themselves as the number 4 team in all of Manhattan. So in terms of sales volume, I think they've closed almost $200 million in deals so far this year. So it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Once again, this building right here, 130 William. Now, hopefully I'll be able to get some footage. Hopefully they'll let me shoot some video there. But if you guys are interested, this is the building, 130 William, 10 o'clock in the morning, the Kirsten Jordan team at Douglas Elliman. So I'm excited about it. Should be pretty fun. We finally made it over the bridge. I think it's more cloudy on the Manhattan side. Starting to feel it a little bit in my sinuses. Feels like you're walking through a cloud. You know, this is also another amazing building right here. I think this may be 14 Spruce Street. I'm not sure the exact address. But Questlove, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, from the Roots Group, which just happens to be Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show band. I think he has a really nice place there. Jax says, Tom, did you hang out in Washington Square Park when you were younger? Ooh, yes, I did, my friend. Those were the days. Those were the days. Now, I would work until like 7, 8 o'clock at night, and then I would grab the skateboard and cruise around Washington Square Park, sometimes into like 2, 3 in the morning during the summer. Lady Sarita says, love some Questlove. Yeah, I mean, the Roots Group is super talented. Love the Roots. Here's one more look at 130 William. We might as well walk there tonight. I'll show you guys the main entrance. I think they took a lot of the scaffolding down. Just the guys. This isn't the Lipstick Building in this area. No, it's not. But it's a good question. The Lipstick Building is the building where Bernie Madoff pulled off that horrible financial fraud Ponzi scheme. That's more Midtown East. So if you think of near Park Avenue, I think you walk over to Lexington or Madison, I forget which. I think it's right on Lexington Avenue. We've been there a bunch of times. Another great shot of the World Trade Center. Oh, I did. I forgot to tell you guys the only other thing we forgot to talk about. There was even more good news in terms of economic data. Did anybody see jobless claims? Jobless claims actually fell yet again, which is great, coming in at 239,000. That was a decline of 26,000 week over week. Now the estimates were for 264,000 jobless claims this week. The actual number was 239,000. So I think that piece of economic data, along with the GDP numbers coming in today better than expected, is pretty much enough to solidify a lock that we're going to get another interest rate hike, right? I mean, talk about how resilient this economy is. So in the face of the most aggressive tightening cycle we've ever seen since Paul Volcker, the economy is still chugging along. People are still out spending money. Consumer spending is as robust as it's ever been in this country. Oh, this is the bike lane, by the way. So for those of you who are new to New York, this used to be an absolute horror show here. It used to be a total cluster. The bikes, the scooters, and the pedestrians used to share the same exact walkway, and it was horrible. It was really, really horrible and very dangerous. So the city actually moved the bike lane down to the street level and made its own little section, which I think was the appropriate thing to do. Now it's way more safer for the pedestrians and the bikers, cyclists, if you will. But I remember walking over this bridge and it would be so packed with tourists, and you'd have bikes whizzing by, scooters, you know, sometimes even Vespas or mopeds. It was not safe, to say the least. Looks like this person is still back in 2012, 2015. Because it is no longer a bike lane anymore. It's only pedestrians. Yeah, just the guy says it's way better. It really is, isn't it? Because this is probably arguably the biggest tourist attraction in the city. Would you say? I would say top 5. Brooklyn Bridge is definitely up there, top 5 tourist attractions. And you want to make sure the tourists are safe. You want to make sure they have a good experience in the city, right? I think cities should be run much like businesses, especially a city like New York. And if you don't give a good customer experience, people aren't going to want to come back. So I think having a dedicated pedestrian walkway to let people enjoy themselves, they don't have to, you know, duck out of the way of bikes. It just creates a better experience for the tourists. And I think that's good. That means they're more likely to come back and spend money in the city. And that's what we want, right? Now, I think this is the site of the pizza thing that happened a couple days ago. There was an activist who bought, I think, like 14 pizzas and started tossing it over the fence here of City Hall. After there was a really silly piece of legislation, I think, that they're trying to pass to ban the wood fire and coal fire ovens for the pizzas, because it's not environmentally friendly. I think that's a little bit silly. I think there's bigger fish to fry than that. But yeah, there was a hilarious video of the guy tossing pizzas. I think it was right here. No, right here at the other one. At least it looks the same, right? Yeah, it was right here. The gates just look similar. They have an NYPD officer making sure nobody else throws pizza pies over. It's definitely a big waste of cheese and sauce for sure. All right, we are gonna make a detour here, my friends, because I'm gonna take you to 130 William. And I'll be here tomorrow at 10 a.m. This is Pace University, very good school. Great location too, right at the base of the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, way back in the day, this actually used to be a Denny's. Anybody remember that? Who remembers the Denny's here? It used to be a Denny's, then it was a steakhouse. I don't even know what it is now. Let's check it out. Hey, Penelope, what's up? Good to see you. Welcome to Lower Manhattan. We just got off the bridge. It's called Chop House. Maybe it's another steakhouse. It actually looks pretty good. Let's check. Maybe there's a menu on the window. Let's look and see what they got. It says Brooklyn Chop House mixes Chinese food with American beef with New York. Interesting. Huh. It looks nice. Looks like a good setup in there. Yeah, check it out, Chop House on the corner of Nassau Street. Is there a menu in the window we could look at? The Brooklyn Chop House. I don't think there's a menu, but you get the idea. Looks good. Good addition to downtown Manhattan. Now, I have a theory that that particular corner may be cursed, because when I used to work down here many moons ago, that was like a revolving door of restaurants. There was a Denny's, there was a steakhouse, it was something else, and now you got that place. Hey, Tory Day, New York, what's up? Welcome, sir. I think we gotta cross because there's no sidewalk here. It's under construction. Very smoky down here, extremely smoky. I'm not sure if it's coming out on the live stream, but man, I could really feel it down here. I think it's because the buildings are so close together here. It's not like Midtown Manhattan when everything's a little bit more spaced out. So it's trapping all the smoke. Wow, this is nice too. Look at this, the Beekman. Look at how gorgeous that lobby is.
You should see the atrium.
It's inside? Can we go inside?
Yeah, we have video.
Oh, okay, we won't go inside. But it looks nice. The guy was like, you should come in, it's beautiful. I'm like, oh, we can go inside? He's like, yeah, no, but you can't video. I'm like, okay, well then we can't go inside. But check it out, the Beekman looks beautiful inside. All right, one more block, and then we were officially at 130 William. Okay, maybe two more. Look at all the construction down here. Interested to see what new development this is. Looks like mixed use. Hey, Karina Thompson's here. I see Dusty Cole. Good to see ya. All right, here we go. Fulton Street. Now it's funny, right? Because you're like, I thought we're going to 130 William. Why would we be turning on Fulton Street? It's a little bit wonky the way they have this set up. One of the main entrances is actually on Fulton Street, as you'll see here in a moment. Next to Joe's Pizza, you can see all the delivery bike guys. Now, the most famous Joe's is actually in Times Square. And this is a you've probably seen this online a bunch of times. This is probably one of the most famous shots of One World Trade Center you could see. We'll try to zoom out a little bit. Steve Gonzalez, what's up?
In other places today, 7-Eleven.
And this is where we're going. That's the main destination. Hey, Ryan Beck, what's up, man? Ryan, what did you think about this better than expected GDP number out today? 2%. With all this recession talk, it's all I hear when you turn on CNBC, Bloomberg. Everybody's like, recession this, recession that. Well, 2% GDP growth doesn't really sound like a recession. And the majority of economists on the street were expecting 1.3% growth. We come out with 2%. All right, so here we go. This is, I would say one of the main facades of the building. Again, on Fulton Street, but you have some retail frontage here. Yeah, Ryan Beck's huge beat. Let me just pull off to the side so you guys can see this. So this is the retail space at 130 William. So here it is. I'm trying to picture what could possibly go in this space. It's a little bit, the ceiling heights are pretty tall. Yeah, somebody said you looked at the least expensive unit, 130 William, it's about 3 million. Yeah, so these are ultra luxury apartments here. I should say condos. So now I'll take you around the block. I just wanted to show you the retail frontage. It's going to need to be something very specific to go in here. Everything in Miami is just another Italy. That would probably fit in quite well with the aesthetics. But again, tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, I will be here with the Kirsten Jordan team from Douglas Elliman. They are one of the top performing real estate sales teams in the city. I think they are number 4 in terms of transaction volume. They've managed to close almost $200 million in sales this year. And they have a preview that I was invited to here at 130 William. All the scaffolding is down. So you have this beautiful, sort of like a courtyard as you enter the front door. Now the amenities in this building are just unbelievable. Everything in Miami says, am I gonna stream it? Probably not. I don't know if I'm allowed to video. But this is one of the things I love about the building. All the windows are these really unique archway windows. Now, what's also unique about this building, if you go on Street Easy, type in 130 William, and if you look at a lot of the fixtures in the building, they're all reminiscent of the amenities, right? So if you take a look at the swimming pool kind of looks like all the sinks in the building and in the units, similar to all of the faucets. So everything sort of has a similar flowing vibe. This is more retail space here. And again, each unit has these really cool arched windows, and it's so strategically placed that depending on where you are in the building, you have unobstructed views of all the main 3 bridges overlooking Lower Manhattan. So you could see the Manhattan Bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, and the Williamsburg Bridge. Now, if you have a north-facing apartment, which would be on this side, you pretty much have all unobstructed views of the World Trade Center, all of Midtown Manhattan. So all the way up to Empire State Building, 1 Vanderbilt, all of Billionaires Row, 432 Park Avenue, Central Park Tower. I'll go to the corner of Fulton Street and William just so you guys can see again. Yes, me Medias is like the Rome Colosseum. It's very similar. Sort of has a similar taste to it. So check this out. Great view of the World Trade Center. Yeah, Joseph Hardaway says, I hope some cool shops get put in there would drive consumer traffic. That would be cool. Now, you know what I've also heard, and I'll just quickly show you guys one more time. a lot of the times in these ultra luxurious apartments, they usually don't put retail space this close to the front entrance. And I'll sort of explain why, from talking with clients and things like that. Because people want privacy, right? Especially if you're gonna buy a $40 million apartment, $25 million apartment in a building like this, you don't wanna be walking through a bunch of people that are shopping at a store right at your front door, right? So you want that ultra privacy. So if you noticed, 220 Central Park South, no retail space. 432 Park Avenue, no retail space. 157, they do have retail space, but they haven't rented it out. And you have the Park Hyatt Hotel, which is, an ultra luxurious 5-star hotel. But a lot of these new developments, they very rarely put retail so close to the front door. Very rarely. In addition, here's a little tax secret. If you've ever noticed why they have these huge public spaces, it's not because the real estate developer is so generous and so kind to us New Yorkers that they're like, you know what, I'm gonna dedicate a portion of our property to the public, 24/7 access so the people of New York can enjoy it. Maybe that's part of it, but they get a little bit of a tax break. Very similar to what we see at 432 Park Avenue when we do our live streams around Billionaires Row. To the right-hand side, these are two great looking dogs here, 10 out of 10 on that. To the right-hand side of 432 Park Avenue, you also have public space. Open to the public 24/7, 365. If you can incorporate some sort of public space in your development, you get a little bit of a tax break. Similar thing happened at Trump Tower. I'm sure you guys have been in the atrium at Trump Tower a bunch of times. But pretty cool nonetheless. Yeah, Dusty calls like, what a nice little space. It is very nice. Especially being in Lower Manhattan where everything is so cramped. It's kind of nice to have a courtyard like this to give the appearance of a little bit more spaciousness, if you will. Now, if they didn't have these overhead lights, you could probably see a little bit better view of the facade of the building, but unfortunately, I think the light pollution drowns that out. Now, you know what would be appropriate, everybody? Yeah, everything in Miami, you're right, the tax abatement. What is it, the 421A tax abatement, I believe is a popular one. And don't quote me on this, I'm not a CPA, I'm not a tax guy, okay? I can't really directly talk about this, but I believe the 421A tax abatement is you will get a big tax break. So these developers, Extel, Maclo, will get a big tax break on building these huge Billionaires Row buildings if they set up a separate fund to fund affordable housing units elsewhere, right? So one of the really controversial things that happened when 157 went up, when Central Park Tower went up, you would think that the taxes on these multi-million dollar apartments would be extremely high, and they are, but at select apartments at 157, they get about a 94% tax break on a lot of these units because Gary Burnett took advantage of that 421A tax abatement so long as he agreed to shift some funds into building affordable housing in New York. But that actually caused a lot of uproar amongst the community, which I get it. Now, we're actually going to be walking back down this way for a very specific reason. And it's because tomorrow we are getting the Federal Reserve's most coveted and watched inflation reading. So that is the PCE index is going to be dropping tomorrow before the bell rings on Wall Street at about 8:30. So the PCE comes out tomorrow at 8:30. And the Federal Reserve is right here, the New York Fed. Now, the New York Fed president is John Williams. And I believe the world's, well, I'll say this. Let me cross the street first. We'll let the cab go. I believe the majority of the world's gold sits right in this building, right here on the right. the Federal Reserve. And tomorrow, inflation data comes out. If it comes in hotter than expected, hopefully it won't, that means a 25 basis point rate hike in July is pretty much on lock, right? As we know, the Fed has raised rates 10 consecutive times. However, they did pause this month in June, but after all of the raving and very positive economic data points we've been getting out, specifically today with GDP coming in at 2%, jobless claims coming in well below expectations, and potentially tomorrow, a hotter than expected inflation reading, that could prompt the Federal Reserve to be steadfast, change course, and raise rates yet again in July by 25 basis points. So this is the home of the Federal Reserve. You can actually see the Federal Reserve Police holding guard here. The door is open, so let's actually walk past it. We're on a sidewalk, we're allowed to film. Crazy to think the vast majority of all the world's gold sits right here. Very cool. Let's cross and get a closer look. Ben Cunningham says, end the Fed. I agree, but I gotta keep my voice down. Don't want our friend Jerome Powell to hear that right as I'm walking right outside his house. Just kidding, just being a little bit funny. Look at these big cast iron doors. These are huge. And this is like so solid, you have no idea. This thing is literally like Fort Knox here. They have their own police force. The Federal Reserve Police. Now, many of people would think, oh, the Federal Reserve, that must mean, the federal government. No. The Federal Reserve has nothing to do with the federal government. It is a private entity. Many people don't realize that. Most of you probably know that, right? Because, a lot of you are interested in finance, but many people think the Federal Reserve is the federal government. It has nothing to do with the federal government at all. It is an independent private entity that sets the course of monetary policy. Now, the President of the United States appoints the Federal Reserve President, but it is totally separate. Check out the windows. Every single window is caged up in big cast iron. And you see the cameras on every window. Look at that. Every single window you got a camera. Camera. For good reason, right? The majority of the world's gold bullion is literally behind these walls. Although, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's like a quarter mile underground. So the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. One of the many landmarks of New York. Yeah, they probably are watching us. That's okay. Maybe we'll get a guided tour. Maybe they'll invite Walks on Wall Street behind doors. Now, we're actually standing at the exact location where they filmed the movie Money Monster. And I know I've said this a million times, but we do have some new people here. I actually watched them film the scene, which is literally right here. So if you look at the movie Money Monster, when George Clooney was wearing that big suicide vest, and he was standing right here, I watched that being filmed. It was right on the corner of Liberty Street and Nassau, right outside the Federal Reserve. Now, in terms of architectural taste, this is a gorgeous building. I think we could all agree with that. This is a really, really gorgeous building here in Lower Manhattan. Hey, Brad's brain, what's up? Ryan Beck says the gold is 5 stories below ground. Yeah, that is kind of crazy to think about. Imagine working at the New York Fed. I think I would just take the elevator down 5 floors just to like look at all these other nations' gold. Now here's a question. Why in the hell would all of these nations trust the Federal Reserve in New York City, in the United States, to house their gold? What if they're just like, we don't want to give it back, come get it? I don't know, if I was another country, I would not entrust, or maybe I don't know, it just seems too weird. I think maybe you could make the argument of globalization, right? Maybe we're all more the same and connected in terms of governments as we think we are. If nations around the world entrust us to hold their gold, to be custodian. Now, this is the New York Stock Exchange right in front of us. But if you guys enjoyed the live stream so far tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. It was a rat. We do these live streams starting at 8:30 p.m. and we will be back live tomorrow. Now today we talked about the GDP number that came out. We talked about jobless claims coming in better than expected. We also briefly mentioned one of the main reasons why GDP growth and consumer spending was higher than normal, because Social Security got a big bump. So seniors are receiving higher paychecks. So if you guys want to join us tomorrow, we'll be right back here talking about the inflation numbers. Subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Who Dat Dave, appreciate it. Dusty Cole, The Wizard, Justin S, Vivian Francesca, thank you so much. Crypto Meme, Victor, Ryan Beck, Michael Joseph, Daryl, Abdullah, Lady Sarita, Flat Smack, Daniel G. Have a great Friday, everybody. There's always a bull market somewhere. You just need to know where to look. Feel free to connect with us in the links in the description, and I'll see you all right back here tomorrow on Walks on Wall Street. Have a good Friday.